In this report, Esther Mokbariola examines the impact of this climate change phenomenon on a section of a Lagos community and how individuals there are adapting to this new reality.
In recent weeks, major cities across the country have been experiencing flash floods due to heavy rainfall. The National Emergency Agency has issued an alert warning residents in states susceptible to this disaster and urging those living in low-lying areas to relocate to higher ground. Here in Lagos, several low-lying areas within the metropolis regularly battle with floodwaters whenever the rain starts, leading to the submersion of numerous communities. Whenever it rains, it pours, and for residents in this locality, the flood situation here has become a usual occurrence due to shallow drainage system and poor infrastructure. While some have devised means to adapt to the situation, others call on the authorities to come to their aid. With tools in hand, Bright creates his own drainage channel to support the construction of his shop, where he plans to sell his goods.
Like me and my sister, we are selling clothes here, sandals, boxer, singlet and t-shirts. So because of the water over there, at times maybe if rain is falling, we cannot be able to come and open our shop. And anytime that rain falls, we cannot be able to come to shop. Like we spend like 3 days before we can be able.
All right, with that, it's a wrap on the news at this hour. We'll bring you more stories in our subsequent bulletins. Thank you for staying with us.
Our planet, our home, threatened by man's activities with fears of mass extinction on the rise. On Green Angle, we examine the issues that affect our environment, seek solutions to put us on track to secure and restore a cleaner and greener world for generations to come.
Always a great morning on the TVC Breakfast Show.
Thanks for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
With the array of stories that matter and what's behind them.
As you say, the first blow indicates the direction of government.
Tell us what really is going on between your union and the federal government.
Once it's generated,
if you don't use it, it's waste. We are not even sure whether we have a strategy for security.
Are you saying that there was nothing wrong in that?
Was he the one driving the taxi?
Answer the question.
Reveal your morning with all you need to know.
Like the
Yes, just mundane lyrics.
Yes.
How does that fit into your scheme of events or duties right now?
No chief of staff, no general has the right to call a governor to order. The governor has been elected by his people.
Start your day right, because this is the breakfast show that adds to your breakfast. TVC Breakfast, weekdays at 7 a.m. only on TVC News.
Doubt and fear doesn't occur at the canvas, it shows in the canvas. It shows the conation of raw earthen material slabbed, stroked and molded at a pace provided by the doubt and fear. Every move way in the struggle of one to the other, merging the past to the present, brushstrokes of colors seen but not known. For when the wailing stops, the pieces settle down in abject beauty erected for a century of a century. Speaking, advocating, protesting as the arts are meant to be.
Every major news story is with many perspectives and layered with different levels of impact.
Hello. What time did this happen? We will be right there.
At TVC News, wherever the big news story is happening, we're geared up to break it. TVC News, first with breaking news.
It's the annual job fair organized by the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association in collaboration with Prince Trust International. The aim of the job fair is to reduce the rate of youth unemployment in the country.
Focus is on renewable energy today, but tomorrow we focus on general businesses, because also renewable energy, just transition, green jobs is an area that we think is the next gold mine in the context of job creation. And the ILO said over 10 million jobs exist within the framework of renewable energy. So it's a way of NECA keying into that conversation and also positioning ourselves to be big players within the context of job creation in the context of that renewable energy space.
Set up Prince's Trust International to help with youth employment challenges around the world. So since that point we've grown to run programs in 23 countries, including now Nigeria, where we've been working for 18 months, but because of COVID we've not been able to launch the program. So that's why we're here this week. We're celebrating the achievements on our Get Into Employability program with Field of Skills and Dreams, which helps young people into work. And we also work with Junior Achievement Nigeria on our Enterprise Challenge program in schools, inspiring the next generation of entrepreneurs.
Global audit and tax advisory firm KPMG projected that Nigeria's unemployment rate is expected to rise to 40.6% compared to 37.7% in 2022. Unemployment is expected to continue to be a major challenge in 2023 due to limited investments by the private sector, low industrialization, slow economic growth, as well as inability of the economy to absorb about 5 million new entries into the labor market annually.
Of the job fair today, Get Hired, as it aligns with the aspirations of government on job creation. It is evident that employers in the organized private are creating new businesses and job opportunities focused on entrepreneurship that can help reduce unemployment and drive economic growth and development.
It's expected that more unemployed youth will participate in the job fair, as employers of labor will be reviewing curriculum vitae for possible employment. According to research, more than 4 billion people have no social protection and 240 million workers live below the poverty line.
Monsieur le Président,
The Director General
votre pays est un exemple.
187 member countries at the World of Work Summit in Geneva, Switzerland, with the theme Social Justice for All, stressed the need for social protection. He encouraged governments to reposition social justice as the keystone of global recovery and ensure that the future is human-centered.
In pursuing this cause, we must not underestimate the importance of a redynamized multilateralism, which is essential if we are to effectively tackle the interconnected crisis of our times and rebuild trust in governance, rebuilding trust in the UN system. If we are to create a renewed social contract, it will need to be driven by solidarity. It will need to be driven by fairness and, above all, to be driven by social justice. The Global Coalition will support these goals by ensuring policy coherence for a greater impact of our actions. It can provide a focused platform that will put social justice front and center at the United Nations Summit, Social Summit, expected in 2025. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, being gathered here today, together it gives us the chance to really think about the route to take if we want to achieve social justice for all.
The president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Joe Ajero, spoke about the campaign for social justice and how the Nigerian government and employers can improve decent work.
Social dialogue, social dialogue, social dialogue. It's only when people discuss and exposures provided by this ILO and others. Most employers, especially in the private sector, have not been assessing the opportunity created by the ILO. If they assess it and we go back to the table and discuss and have an agreement and have progressive legislation, especially in the National Assembly, that will guide, the issue of decent work. If we do that and with proper commitment and regulatory framework, which ordinarily should be provided by the Ministry of Labour, then we are good to go. But where the labor unions are calling for decent work repeatedly and the employers are not, it will amount to clapping with one hand. Not much will be achieved. At worst, you have disruption of work, which will still not help a country like Nigeria in terms of productivity.
The International Labour Organization had in attendance 17 heads of states and governments at the ILO Work Summit. All they discussed all through the day was the importance of policies that would ensure that decent work is promoted across the globe.
Whenever there are changes like this, there are always unintended consequences. In as much as we'll do everything to ensure nobody gets hurt, and by getting hurt I mean losing their means of livelihood, we also recognize that there might be some grounds not covered and definitely people will be affected. All we can do is to ensure people get themselves trained, get themselves fortified in the sense that they are positioned such that the requirements for the new form of energy or new form of work, they are relevant, not obsolete. And as a group, as a labor center, we encourage people, we identify them, we give them opportunities to do it. There's so much we can do, but individuals have to be interested and also position themselves. When it comes to the transition itself, it's a two-way thing, because when you look at it detailedly, it will be difficult to tell you that this transition would happen as we expect. It might not happen as soon as it is being preached, but eventually it's something that would happen. But also, the world needs to recognize that there are peculiarities. For instance, Africa contributes about 3%, less than 5% of the emissions worldwide. So you don't expect Africa to cut down as much as the rest of the world is doing.
Reality on ground. Not many people also have been up to date about what it's really all about. But we have to keep on educating our society, that's why all our stakeholders, that this is the reality. We don't have to wait until it catches us in the face, so that we won't lag behind a lot. The time of energy, clean energy, is not the issue. We are talking about our future, about our generations, future generations, and we have to be prepared for them. Not that they wait until they get us and they will not forgive us because we didn't do our job properly. So that's why we are campaigning for it. It's good, it's cheaper, it's cleaner, it's healthier. Instead of sucking in this carbon monoxide and everything, we just do it. So it's the reality, whether we like it or not. Green energy it is, and we are working towards it. Being prepared is another issue, but that is the reality on the ground, my dear.
Anything is achievable including just transition, because I believe that to do anything, once all parties involved, all stakeholders come with a genuine intent, and everybody understands the fact that as stakeholders in a business, we all have very major roles to play, and we come with genuine concerns and intents and bring all the cards to the table, make proper moves, put in proper measures, proper policies. Just transition definitely is achievable. So I think so.
Transition cannot be overemphasized because one is very new to Nigeria. In fact, at the plenary session of the committee, a lot of issues were discussed about it, where the employer, the government, and equally the workers, which we represent, participated actively. But however, in Nigeria, of course, we know that we are just moving into that directions, and we need a lot of conversation in that respect. And the conversation has to surround within the areas where the workers will operate, because it's a new phase of working process. Now, as we are now, a lot of people don't understand what just transition is all about, and we need to have a conversation both with the government, both with the employer, and the workers too, especially as it affects the electricity workers. We are moving into renewable energy, and at the end of the day, people should be able to understand that very soon the fossil fuel will phase out. Now, if we are moving into renewable energy, how do they transit? Do they have the right skills? Do they have the training? Do they have the conversation around it? How does the government improve on the environment for them to survive it? There must be high capacity building. There must be communication. There must be collective bargaining in those areas so that they can be able to fit into that process.
On the profile interview segment this week, I'll be speaking with the president of the Trade Union Congress, who also doubles as the president of Pengasan. He brings us up to speed on the need for casualization of workers to be reduced to various minimum in Nigeria and across the world. He also spoke about just transition and different perspectives that would ensure that employers of labor are ready, the workers are ready, and also the government. Congratulations. It's the first conversation we'll be having after your election as the president of Pengasan. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
A lot has been happening in the labor sphere, but we are right here at the 111th conference of the International Labour Organization. And looking at the union you're coming from, I think just transition is just the perfect question for me to ask you. How would you rate Nigeria's preparedness towards just transition, and what has been the discussion so far at the ongoing International Labour Organization conference?
I thank you for congratulating Pengasan as well for the transition we just had on the 11th of May. Ironically, it's about 1 month since that election. Yeah, as you have rightly said, here in the ILO, one of the areas that was looked at was the issue of just transition. And for us, just transition is one thing as an association that we have actually that we started talking about. You remember last year in Abuja, when we had our Pengasan Week, the Pengasan Energy and Labour Summit, whereby we brought captains of industries, we brought industry experts to discuss on issues that are bordering on energy transition and just transition, how will actually affect us as workers. What are the skill sets that will be required for us to start developing today so that we will remain relevant tomorrow? What are those innovations we need to bring to bear as at today so that tomorrow our voices will still be heard and our services will still be required? So all these were what we started last year, and after that function we came up with a communique and we are also deepening it. But coming back to ILO, one of the things we have said as regard just transition, even in the ILO, and that has been our advocacy internationally, is that yes, energy transition is okay, we believe in it, we think that's the way to go. But in doing it, they should place much more searchlight and much more focus on those countries that are emitting over 90% of the pollution. Because between the US and China, you know the percentage that they emit, it's quite enormous. Then by the time you now add Europe into it, it's quite much. Africa contribute less than 3% to the global world also look at, domestically. So for us, clearly, one of the things we have advocated is that the transition must be just. The transition must have human face. And the transition must not lead to massive job loss. And the transition must also be able to put food on the table of the masses.
So far, how prepared are your members for the just transition? And what more do you think the government and other relevant stakeholders actually need to do at this point in time to ensure that it doesn't meet us unawares and we are prepared and probably there won't be job loss or other further interference that might affect the daily lives of in your sector most especially?
Yes, as I said a few minutes ago, that one thing in Nigeria is that we like writing, we like putting things on paper, but at the end of the day, it is beyond that. Today, we have the energy transition policy, but we are not seeing the walkthrough. Because it's very easy for you to write bogus statements, very easy for you to put things on the paper, but how has this translate into practicality? So we are calling on government that those things that they have put on paper, they should come up with a policy, not just on paper, but how will this policy be implemented? No doubt there will be skill gap. What are the necessary trainings that the employers need to be putting our members through today? Just as we have said, fossil fuel will still remain with us for a while. But even at that, let's also have at the back of our mind that we are moving towards the greener energy. So we must be prepared today so that tomorrow we will not be caught napping. We must be able to put those things in place today so that we'll be ready tomorrow. So government, employers of labor, trade unions, we must all sing with one voice and we must all advocate so that at the end, the Nigerian workers and the Nigerian masses will be better for it.
Recently, you spoke about casualization of workers in the country. It's not just the oil and gas sector that is faced with this particular ugly trend. We also have the financial sector and other sectors faced with this pandemic. What more do you think can be done to ensure that decent work is promoted and we have more workers in paid employment rather than being casual workers, be it in any form, outsourcing, insourcing, they call it different names. So what more can be done by labor and every other tripartite to ensure that we have decent work, and which might be needed more right now because the standard of living has actually, the inflation has actually skyrocketed and expectations are high.
Most of the government institutions are very weak. Most of the government institutions are not functioning. If you go to some certain countries, even in African countries like Angola, there are things you cannot do. There are, the ways with which you employ labor, it's spelled out. Casualization, you can't do it the same way you are doing it in Nigeria. Because if you do it, it is not the trade unions that will come after you. The trade unions will act as whistleblowers. It is the government agencies that will come. They can even revoke your license. But in Nigeria, the reverse is the case. We have government agencies who are not proactive, who doesn't do what they ought to do. We also had a labor ministry that are not doing the things they ought to do. Because if you go to a lot of organizations today, core jobs that are in organogram, the organic jobs are being done by casual staff, which clearly negate the principles of outsourcing. So for us, the government institutions must be strong. In fact, Nigeria, we have an opportunity today because we have a new government in place, and we have called on this new government that whosoever you want to send to the Ministry of labor should be somebody that understands the labor policies, should be somebody that understands the ILO conventions, should be somebody that has even practiced maybe HRO or has been a unionist in the past. So it must be a round peg in a round hole. Don't go and give us somebody who will come to the job and will spend the first 2 years learning, because it is a special ministry. It is a ministry that does not just deal with equipment, they don't just deal with tools, but they deal with human beings. They deal with emotions, they deal with feelings, they deal with people's job. So For you to bring somebody into that ministry, it must be somebody that understands the fundamentals of industrial relations. So for us, that has been our advocacy. So we'll start from there, so that that person will not be able to re-engineer the Ministry of Labor. Because Ministry of Labor, there are a lot of things that the employers are doing that Ministry of Labor ought to be checkmating. But not a situation where you have a labor ministry who sides with the employers and allow Nigerians and the workers to be exploited. So let us start from there. So by the time we are able to do that, then the trade unions will now be like whistleblowers, just as it is in other climes and other parts of the world. Casualization is killing Nigerians. People are working and they are underpaid, and the companies are going away with millions and billions of naira and dollars as profit. The permanent staff are being retrenched and replaced with willing to work, because, like as we have said, governance is not a tea party. Governance is not for the weak. Governance is not for those that doesn't know what to do. But governance are for the strong, are for those that are innovative, and those that understand what it takes to lead.
Finally, going back to the International Labour Organization conference, which we are here in Geneva, Switzerland, the theme of the discourse centered mostly on social justice, which also lead us also to social protection, which is important again at this point. Personally, that's my personal view. As the Trade Union Congress president, as the president of Pengasan, what more needs to be done to ensure that we have more Nigerians covered, be it the unemployed or the aged? What more can be done to ensure that they are protected socially? Perhaps maybe there will be to be a better condition for living condition for either the ordinary Nigerians or workers at large.
Yes, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. All over the world, in the Western world, you have a lot of social protection. You have somebody that is out of his job, then there are some level of protection and welfare packages for such person. And you have people, you have the old people, those that have worked all through their lives, and at the end of the day they have retired, they are now sick. There are some forms of social protection that are extended to them. But the foundation or the fundamental problem we have as a country, the fundamental problem we have is that in Nigeria we don't have database. So if you ask now, how many retirees do we have in the private sector, in the public sector? And clearly, how many people are unemployed in Nigeria? How many people are underemployed? Forget those bogus statistics. Those are numbers that they throw around. But if you ask them to show you, they are not there. It's all around. People give birth in the rural areas that never visit hospitals. How do we capture them? So as a country, we must be serious. It is after this, then we'll be talking much more about social protection. If you remember very well, that we did conditional cash transfer, in the last 8 years of the previous administration. But we have asked, who are the people? I don't know. If you have relatives that received the 5,000 naira. So we have been asking questions. We see that they tell us that they send 5,000 naira here and there, but we never see them. We don't know how those money are being distributed. Where are the database? Who are those that receive them? Where are their name number? Where are their account number? So social protection for us, yes, we advocate, we push for it. For those that we can capture today, let us do it. But it shouldn't be an opportunity for corruption. It shouldn't be an opportunity for siphoning the commonwealth of the country.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show.
There is always more to a story than the screaming headline. The part of a story that is not told casts a shadow. It's like the part of an object that is not reached by light. On TVC News, I'm able to explore the many angles there are to a story, talking to stakeholders, asking the difficult questions, and digging for facts. I believe the viewers are able to make a better decision if they're well informed and understand not just a part, but the complete story. TVC News, first with breaking news.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. In Proverbs 28 verse 13, The Bible says, he that covereth his sin shall not prosper. But whosoever confess them and forsake them shall have mercy. Unbelief is sin. Unforgiveness is sin. Selfishness is sin. I want to let you know, pride is sin. Contention, strife, keeping malice, bearing grudge, lusting after evil thing, covetousness, love of money, love of the world, insincerity, disobedience, blasphemy, anger, envy, speaking evil of other people, backbiting, murmuring, cursing people, swelling with heaven and earth. All these are terrible sins. You must confess them, renounce them, and promise God.
Right then.
At TVC News, we follow the big and major news, gathering the facts, witnessing the outcome.
I am here live at the aftermath of the approval of the new national minimum wage.
We are TV Station of the Year, not just for breaking news, but for being first, fair and accurate. TVC News, first with breaking news.
It's not a regular show. It's an online interactive session where I will share my views on the everyday issues that cut across politics, security, health, current affairs, governance, and so much more. I am passionate about our country. I choose to support any conversation geared towards building a better Nigeria. I am Babajide Kolade Otitoju. Join me every Saturday on TVC News YouTube channel as I discuss Nigeria and the world at large on the show, Issues with Jide.
At TVC News, wherever the big news story is happening, we're geared up to break it. TVC News, first.
On the news this hour, President Tinubu directs security agencies to fish out the masterminds of the Mangu and Benue killings. Acting Comptroller of Customs to engage neighboring customs services on border security, regional integration. Outside Nigeria, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Kyiv will fight for security guarantees on its way to NATO. And in sport, World Football Body FIFA banned Saudi club Al Nassr from signing players over failure to pay Leicester City for Ahmed Musa transfer. This is TVC News at 1, reaching you live from our headquarters here in Lagos. We are staying with President Bola Tinubu's directive to security agencies to fish out the masterminds of the killings and violence in Mangu local government of Plateau State and in Benue State. He also directed them to ensure they face the full wrath of the law. The president, while reaffirming his government's determination to stamp out violent crimes and all forms of criminalities in Nigeria, says there is need to rebuild trust and restore harmony to these conflict areas. He urged community leaders, religious leaders, traditional rulers, socio-cultural organizations, and the leadership of Arewa Consultative Forum, Jama'atu Nasri Islam, and Christian Association of Nigeria to work together to help foster genuine and long-lasting peace. President Tinubu also charged the government of Plateau and Benue State and emergency response agencies to provide support and immediate relief to victims who have been displaced as a result of the conflicts. In the meantime, the Acting Comptroller General of Nigeria Customs Service, Adewale Adeniyi, has briefed President Bola Tinubu on the vision and strategy of the Customs Service under his leadership, particularly aligning with the desire of the Tinubu administration to shore up revenue. The customs chief commended the decision of government to implement the removal of fuel subsidy. He says this has significantly caused a decline in the rate of smuggling of petroleum products outside the country.
I came around first to express gratitude to Mr. President for finding me worthy of being appointed the Acting Controller General of Customs, and also to felicitate with him for his recent appointment as the chairman of ECOWAS. For us in the Nigeria Customs Service, ECOWAS represents a very bold attempt to forge regional integration, cooperation in border security, in monetary affairs. Well, it is not true that all Nigerian borders have been opened. The situation, the status quo ante still existing in the borders. If you remember, borders were selected, strategic borders were reopened.
Acting Comptroller General of the Nigeria Customs Service there. Over 100 illegal crude oil refining sites have been destroyed by operatives under the Central Naval Command in the last 3 months. Rear Admiral Ibrahim Shatima disclosed this as I handed over leadership to the new flag officer commanding Central Naval Command, Rear Admiral Umar Chugali in Yenagoa. Joseph Kunde has details.
This will be the second handover ceremony at the Central Naval Command in Yenagoa this year. The outgoing flag officer commanding Rear Admiral Ibrahim Shatima is leaving after about 3 months in charge. He hands over to Rear Admiral Umar Chugali, who takes over as the 14th officer in charge at the Central Naval Command.
The units under command, due to their commitment and hard work, have been able to locate over 190 illegal refining sites. These are sites that refine, as it were, illegally stolen crude oil from our oil heads. And those refining sites were deactivated as appropriate. The governor in particular and the good people of Bayelsa State have done a lot, and really cooperated with the Navy and the Central Command area. I'm leaving Bayelsa State after a period of comfort, as it were, in terms of ensuring that the peace in the state has been sustained.
The signing of the handover notes is followed by the handing of the CNC flag to the new FOC as it promises to synergize with all relevant agencies to fulfill the command's mandate.
I will take off from where he stopped, and with the support and assistance from
Admiral Ibrahim Shatima will be assuming duty as Director of Plans at the Defense Headquarters in Abuja. Joseph Kunde, TVC News, Yenagoa.
In other news, the National Independent